I'm Derrick Harris. I'm a writer for GigaOm. I'm the moderator, and I think the idea of this discussion is to talk about like where Hadoop is going, kind of how the market is shaking out now that it's been whatever 5 years since we've kind of been talking about it at a pretty significant scale. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to the panelists. Everyone just kind of give like a brief intro of yourself, your history, the company, and then whatever company you're with, and then we can get started.
Sure. My name is Ashish Thusoo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Qubole. Qubole essentially does big data as a service, provides Hadoop and the related technologies as a platform in a cloud, as a cloud-based platform for folks to use. And in my past life, I was also a co-creator of Apache Hive and ran the big data team at Facebook.
Hello, I'm Stefan. I would put me into the open source hacker community. I've worked since 2003 on this open source project that was called Nudge. Who heard about Nudge? Yay, old school. Okay, that's the birthplace of Hadoop. So yeah, I'm doing this since 10 years. Happen to be co-founder and CEO of a company called Datameer, what is basically the analytics layer on top of the Hadoop infrastructure. Tomer.
Thank you. My name is Tomer. I'm VP Product Management at Mapr Technologies. Been with the company for about 4 years now. And Mapr provides a highly differentiated Hadoop distribution, so they really combining the Apache Hadoop with additional innovation from Mapr to provide a differentiated Hadoop distribution.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kimball. I'm the chief architect and co-founder of WibiData. We help organizations build big data applications with an emphasis on personalization and recommendation. Previously, I was the first engineer at Cloudera. I did a lot of training there, as well as created Apache Scoop.
Hi, my name is Paco. I'm chief scientist at a company here in San Francisco called Mesosphere. We're commercializing the Apache Mesos project. If you're familiar with like Google Board, for instance, it's similar to that. I'm also an O'Reilly author of enterprise data workflows with cascading, so that's probably a little bit more why I'm here.
All right. No, Paco, you're here to talk about Mesos. So, I don't know, I didn't put it together. I want to talk about Mesos. But, so the one thing, like, just interesting, I mean, there are 5 people here. We're talking about Hadoop, and only one of them is with someone selling a Hadoop distribution, right, or pitching one anyway. So, I mean, I think that says a lot about kind of where the market has come. It used to be Cloudera, then it's Cloudera and Hortonworks and Mapr and IBM or whomever. Now it's kind of like everyone on the stage. I just want to give so given how long you guys have been in the Hadoop space, if you just talk about, I guess, where Hadoop has come from your perspective, right, like in terms of, why you're doing what you're doing, right, or kind of where you see the space for integration being. And I will butt in without a mic if as needed.
Sounds good. Well, I think Hadoop has certainly come a long way since it started, but I think it's still fundamentally a very technical product. It's fundamentally still a very product which sort of appeals to a lot of technologists, and it's growing out of that as well. And so our take for that, especially in Qubole, was, hey, how do we bring this technology closer to folks in a much easier manner? And so that's why we sort of took on and said, okay, let's provide this as a service, so people don't have to really muck around with the operations of Hadoop. People don't have to deal with the complexity of Hadoop. Having said that, I think in the general ecosystem, it's a very exciting time right now. I mean, there's not just about a couple of years back, there was like, okay, the infrastructure is done, and now things are moving to apps. While that is also happening, what I find is there's a lot of great infrastructure projects also happening within the Hadoop ecosystem as well. On faster queries and things like that. So it's a very, very exciting time generally in the Hadoop ecosystem. If anything, it's becoming more and more complete, both from the infrastructure side, attacking various new use cases, as well as from the application side, a lot of new applications being built on top of it. So I'm really excited being part of this.
So can I ask, so you helped build Hive, and then Qubole kind of does, some Hive stuff, some Mapr stuff. I mean, So what's your take then on, kind of the newer stuff, right? I mean, the SQL on Hadoop, the interactive stuff, the Hive isn't good. I don't want to say Hive isn't good enough. You know what I'm saying?
No, well. So here is how Hive evolved, right? I mean, Hadoop was essentially a batch processing system, and Hive was okay. How do you make the first step towards making this technology more accessible to people who understood SQL? So we did Hive. Once Hive is there and people get a SQL interface, the next expectation is, hey, why is this not faster, right? And so that has spawned off a whole bunch of other projects. I think the Hive community is doing some work in that area. There are projects like Impala from Cloudera has done, doing some work there. There's Facebook is doing its Presto thing. I think Drill is, so I think these are certainly addressing a need. And what I'm pretty confident is that this need is going to get satisfied. Whether it's, I don't think there's a space for like 20 different projects here, but 2 or 3 of them will certainly survive and will have their distinct architectures and distinct performance metrics, which will make them amenable to various different use cases. So I'm really excited. I think Hive started the revolution of democratizing Hadoop. I think these projects are taking it a bit further, and Hive is also working on it. So I think it's exciting time. That's why I say it's very exciting time to be in infrastructure as well. For building these things.
Right. And it's fun. Datameer, you've been doing like Hadoop. I mean, you guys have kind of this Excel like spreadsheet interface for Hadoop. I mean, and you guys were at this pretty early. I mean, kind of before this whole
before all of that. Yeah. I'm the worst possible person to talk about SQL and Hadoop because I think it's. Let me look for a word. It's going in the wrong direction. And let me, just so it's a little bit more fun for the audience, let's make it a little bit more fun for you guys. So what is Hadoop, right? Moore's law came to a point that hardware became incredibly cheap. We built a distributed layer on top of that, that now even Moore's law is multiplied by the number of machines in your cluster. What that basically means is that we can completely turn around how we do data analytics. Traditionally, we have a 3-tier architecture that we designed 50 years ago. 50 years ago, we spent tens of millions of dollars on hardware. This is the 21st century. Hardware is so incredibly cheap compared to the human resources and compared to the time you have to invest. So what Hadoop really brought to the table is that cool idea of no schema, right? Where instead of you have the raw material, you transform it into something, you melt almost like plastic into a schema, where you design your schema today based on knowledge from yesterday, and then you hope it's good enough for tomorrow. Anybody predicted yet the future of his company? The reality business moves so fast that the schema is always old. So putting SQL on top of Hadoop and requiring a schema for me is a step back because Vertica, Greenplum, Teradata, Netezza, they're doing a fantastic job. And by the way, Vertica is half the price of what you get a good Hadoop distribution for. Right? So I do agree we need to, Hadoop and MapReduce was very hard to understand for a lot of people. But putting SQL on top of a sequential optimized file system and now have a query language that actually comes out of a B-tree-based index is kind of a stretch for us. So our approach is different, right? Where we say, okay, the idea is to pull in the raw data and now you have unlimited storage and compute. Instead of predicting the future, building a schema, what takes you 18 months, we say we have the raw data, we build views on the data from an analytics perspective. And the spreadsheet just happened to be the user interface. So again, just to make it a little bit more interesting, I would say SQL, we already had that, and it's great. There are use cases, and they're very important. But the problem is the Hadoop distributed file system works like a tape drive. You guys remember the tape drive? Finding the song on the end? Right? You have to go to the whole tape drive. Right? It's all very sequential optimized. That means it's super fast for I/O, but not really good for queries. Okay, that will be my pitch.
So why all the
maybe just to bring some.
Maybe Tomer can answer this, but why all the excitement? I mean, I think there's been, by my count, half a dozen at least projects and/or companies started around SQL and Hadoop, right? So there's clearly some. I mean, that seems to be something that people want when they think about it.
Can I say maybe one sentence? Yeah, because all the traditional technology is built in SQL. If you look at Facebook, they had MySQL and PHP developers that know, and I mean, you said that, right? They tried to bring Hadoop closer to their folks. And if you look who's really driving SQL on top of Hadoop, is those companies that have 40 years old technology, like IBM or EMC, that would like to make it work with the cool new Hadoop. But you know, Hadoop doesn't solve, it's not the silver bullet, it does not wash your dishes, but you know, it's kind of moving it back because innovation was the NoSQL. And the funny thing is, if you take 15 minutes, go into the Apache Nudge mailing list archive and read 7 months of discussion from dog cutting with the rest of the people why we do NoSQL, I think that's very educational. Sorry.
I would want to get a comment.
Yeah, so
Good. Now we get going.
So I agree. There's you know, a lot of the innovation around Hadoop is related to kind of dynamic schemas and schemaless data, and I think the reason companies are interested in the high level idea of SQL and Hadoop is because they have a technology stack that supports SQL and they have talent that knows SQL, right? So there's that existing investment that they want to be able to leverage, right? So that's kind of at a high level. They're saying, well, if all my data is in Hadoop, well, why do I need this other relational system, right? And that's kind of how they're approaching it. You know, one of the things Mapr is one of the companies behind an open source project called Apache Drill. So it's an Apache project for SQL and Hadoop. And one of the key innovations there is that it kind of marries the MongoDB type approach of dynamic schemas and schemaless data with the traditional relational approach. So you can actually have schemaless data and you can query it, and you don't have to have you don't need to have that central kind of schema management and you know the constantly keeping the schema in sync. So you know, I totally agree that in many use cases the schema is evolving very rapidly. The big data, you know, some of our customers say that big data is just by nature it's messy, right? It's not as clean as the traditional relational data of my sales transactions and so forth. So being able to support that kind of evolving schema and maybe cases where each record actually has a different schema is really important. And I think some use cases are going to be like that, where a decentralized approach makes sense with dynamic schemas, and some use cases that's kind of like the more MongoDB type approach, and some use cases are going to be the use cases where you have a centralized metadata or schema management system. And Drill kind of combines both options, makes both of those possible. So. Don't want to get too deep here into kind of that specific project. I know there is a talk at 2 about that project, so you could learn more about that at that talk.
Where to start? All of the previous speakers are all right and they're all wrong. Speaking as somebody who is a NoSQL system-based vendor, you've all used Hadoop-based applications and you probably didn't even realize it yet. If you've logged into LinkedIn at any point in the last year and a half, you've used a Hadoop-powered big data application. If you have purchased anything on Amazon, you have used a Hadoop-powered big data application. Same with Facebook, same with all these giant websites. Oftentimes people ask, where are the apps on top of Hadoop? And I'm like, you already use it. It's just that you don't submit MapReduce jobs yourself, thank God. And that's great. And Hadoop has the capability to power the front-end systems and make them better and more responsive to their users across a wide variety of industries. We produce at WibiData a middleware framework on top of Hadoop and HBase called Kiji. And like anybody who in this audience has made a web application before? Who of you started by forking Apache HTTPD and hacking it directly into the HTTP protocol layer?
That was a long time.
Yeah, none of y'all. Well, okay, that guy. He's a show-off. But besides the show-offs, everybody else probably used a stack where they took like a servlet-based system and like, look, you just write some business logic, you wire it up to some URLs, and bam, web app. At this point, you can literally type in the command line, like Rails generates scaffold users, and it makes you like a blog, like on the command line with one command. And this sort of middleware tier abstracts away the transport layer from the business logic. Same with Hadoop today. Like Hadoop itself is like the MapReduce is like the HTTP of data processing. Like it's a protocol that will like push data through, and it really sucks to write directly to it. So we've been working on a bunch of tools on top of this. But all these tools include business logic, and business logic necessarily has a schema. Whether you've got a data dictionary that explicitly annotates a set of columns with types, unless you're using Ruby and calling toString on every single field that you get back, you're implicitly using types. Some things are integer fields, some are dates, some are strings, some are records that are composed of these and several other data types. Schema always exists if data is useful, unless you're using a tool as straight up naive as grep. And grep is a really crude way to do data analysis, possibly powerful if you use it with awk, but still a little like teeth pulling. So you've always got your, even in awk, like you've got a schema. It's crappy column-based tabular schema, but it's still a schema, but it's encoded directly in the application layer. So we produce schema management tools that abstract this away from the application. We let the application pull the schema out of a data dictionary. But we recognize that it's polyschema. It's not no schema, it's schema on read, schema flexibility. The ability to say there are multiple valid perspectives to use this data, and older applications, legacy components of your entire framework are going to read data from an older perspective, but they still have a perspective, and if you write in a type-safe language, that perspective needs to be respected or you're going to get a crash. Whereas new applications might have new data fields to write in, and as long as we can project between these different schemas and reconcile them, that's fine. So to get back to the SQL tangent here, there are plenty of reasons why one might want to select count star from users where condition is true. And you can debate whether SQL is like the best mechanism to do that, but the fact that I could actually say that sentence and like half the heads in this room nod implies that there's a commonality of language that is familiar to a lot of people. And the reason we don't see more people writing raw MapReduce is A, it's incredibly verbose, and B, it's incredibly arcane. SQL is kind of neither, and so I think that it offers a valid mechanism to access data. It's not the only valid mechanism to access this data, but for a very large class of people who have to get their jobs done, it works. So we produce an adapter to plug into Hive because while we don't expect everybody to do a lot of their real-time processing in it, like at the end of the day, there's still plenty of bookkeeping and exploration that can be done using Hive, and it just works.
Is there a point where when I look at so Stefan's point that SQL is moving backward from where Hadoop should be going, and I think it makes sense to say that moving forward should be applications. Like, it shouldn't just be about whatever, this kind of cliche, like, oh, we're going to get insights from data. Like, you actually want to build stuff and build applications on top of it and do stuff. So it sounds like that changes your thinking, maybe completely, right, when you're looking at how do I build an application versus how do I do the same stuff I've been doing with the new data set, right?
I mean, we are helping people build applications, but like even at LinkedIn, where they have like a big data application, like the thing where it like says like people you may know and all that stuff, like that's all Hadoop-powered machine learning behind the scenes. Yes, they're not actually a client. I wish they were, but they're sufficiently smart that they don't need our help. But they still use things like Pig and Hive to do an awful lot of QA, like quality checking, like raw counts. Like, how many users logged in yesterday? Like, how are you going to answer that question? You do a group by.
How does that work though? So with your customers, let's say, because I think there's somewhat of a difference between a large web company and the Fortune 500 or whoever that everyone wants to sell to, because the web companies aren't buying. Like, so that LinkedIn does these, has to run these massive things, or Facebook does, or whomever, but like, how do you take, that's even SQL, or anything, or Hive or anything, and translate that into a product that, like, you have Hadoop, now here's how you use it in a valuable way,
Well, we work with large retailers, for example, and Amazon has their own machine learning team that produces really good recommendations. And if you've been reading about various e-commerce or regular sort of brick-and-mortar retailers that also have a large web presence, a lot of them aren't doing as well as Amazon, and they'd like to. So the ability to provide advanced machine learning capabilities that use tools like HBase to respond to users in real time and provide per user customization and recommendations is sort of the driving feature of the application itself. But you still need to take its temperature. You still need to have humans get a 30,000-foot view of the data and then also drill down into the micro level on a potentially record-by-record basis, especially when debugging, to understand where's that next machine learning algorithm going to come from. And the ability to summarize information in a human digestible form and to refine what you are looking for is something you do with ad hoc scripting. And be that a pig script, be that a Hive query, be that some sort of Splunk or grep-like interface, like these are all at the end of the day, the system is not going to tend itself. Humans need to have the creative spark required to provide the tweaks to drive it forward.
I want to ask Paco to see that. So I want to get you into the discussion here. In terms of, do you see a point where? Now I forgot what I was going to say, but it was. I think it was two. Oh, it was to Aaron's point about, or anyone's point about, I guess, SQL, or wanting to, why do we need this relational system? Like, how far do you see Hadoop expanding? Is it possible to say, well, I guess we don't need Teradata anymore? Like, is that achievable? I guess we don't need Oracle.
Well, so I live in a world that's a lot closer to what Aaron was describing. Definitely the middleware, from my perspective, I spend a lot of time going out to large enterprise IT shops, talking with them about their use cases and apps. And Hadoop really doesn't run in isolation. The abstraction layers, the middleware is really crucial to build apps because you're going to tie in Hadoop with Storm or Cassandra and definitely lots of HBase. So you're building these apps out of a lot of pieces and you have to wire them together. But also talking with the larger shops, not the web companies, but the other ones that we want to sell to. When they talk about apps, it's not just a batch requirement, there's also real-time requirements, services. So I work more with what I would call mixed workloads, where you're using things like MapReduce to build data products, but then when you take those results and push them out to your customers, actually put them into the applications we use, it's probably not based off of anything even remotely close to Hadoop. It's probably being served off of Ruby on Rails or Memcache or whatever. So we see the benefit of mixing the workloads to be able to cut down the latency, boost utilization, etc.
Okay. I would like to push that a little higher to the app section. So, I do agree, and not just disagree. So who's a developer in the audience? Software developer. Who thinks is software developer? Who's a data analyst? Okay, who's a data consumer? I guess everybody, right? So I think what's specific about this audience and us, we're all engineers, I think, yeah? We used to build apps. But if you really look out into the wild world, the quantity of data consumption happens not, we're building apps, but then the end consumers use that, right? So if you look at the number of queries that are generated or run against Oracle, there's maybe 10% generated by apps that people actually build, and 90% is done by, the CRM system, the Salesforce, the HR systems, the what have you, the software that we maybe build. So I think what is very critical today, in my strongest belief, and the reason I'm doing this since almost 20 years, the whole data thing, is that in data we can find insights to make this a better world. I strongly believe we will find the cure for cancer by analyzing data, right? And a lot of other problems. The problem though today, data analytics is only available to a technical elite. To us software developer, to the people that learned SQL. Well, good luck learning SQL if you're a doctor, right? Or if you, whatever your field is. So I think it is great as we're expanding our technology and making Hadoop faster and adding the middleware and so on. But I think the really breakthrough that we together as a community can reach is if we make data analytics available to everybody, right? If we have a doctor that can look at your history, your eating pattern, because he swiped your sales Safeways card and you should cut a little bit back on the bacon. I think then we will really get a breakthrough. And at this point, the problem is, especially for healthcare and for wherever you look, it's only a technical elite that are not subject matter experts that can work with the data, that then kind of learn a little bit about healthcare or a little bit about cancer research. And I think that's what we need to break through. So pushing it up is, I think, a very good thing, to bring it back to the apps.
So there's been a lot of debate about SQL, and so I agree. We have to make democratized data and so on and so forth. Apps is certainly one way of doing it, and actually part to apps is through SQL as well. It's not like people talk about, like Stefan has talked about structured and unstructured data. SQL doesn't mean that it can't work over unstructured data. As you can put a schema. When people talk about RDMS systems, they talk about enforcing structure when the data is written. Hadoop is very different from that. Hive is different from that. You can actually store JSON logs in Hadoop and still be able to query it through SQL, through Hive. So I think that this whole structured, unstructured SQL not good for structured, unstructured is just a hogwash. That doesn't really apply. So as far as really taking the data processing power to the users, I think that's a great thing. And one of the best ways to do it is to actually provide this data powerhouse that we have, which is Hadoop, behind a lot of tools and a lot of mechanisms that people are already using. So you talk about end users, they're using Tableau, for example. A lot of users use Tableau. How can you make Tableau work well with Hadoop? Part of that also goes through Hive SQL. Yes, you could write yet another new abstraction which works natively Hadoop. That's great. We should do that. But that doesn't go to say that, hey, that is the only mechanism through which you should be interacting with Hadoop and nothing else.
So I want to get the panel's opinion on, when you talk about applications and you talk about democratizing data, right, and whether that means like, letting someone use Tableau or Platform or ClearStory or any of these things, or Datameer or what I mean, literally.
I pay you the bill.
Or whatever. I mean, whatever. I mean, pick your kind of analytics tool. But there's also like even building applications like kind of real-time applications, machine to machine, whatever. Like the other thing we're seeing with Hadoop as a platform, I think, is that MapReduce is it's still very popular. Don't get me wrong, but very few things that seem to be now the new things coming out. They're always built on. It's always in memory, right? Or it's on top of Spark, or it's somehow or Cloudera's building Impala. These engines kind of aside from representation. Let's get your opinion on as you look forward, right? And you look to the next line of business, the next thing that as a company you obviously want to sell, right? You can't sell something on MapReduce. I mean, is there a point where you have to look and say, I guess how do you approach this whole? We need to build our applications on an in-memory platform. If we're a vendor, we have to start selling. We have to figure out a way to address it in memory, or we have to, I mean, that's not saying in memory because it's easy, but whatever, any of the Storm, any of these kind of alternative processing frameworks.
So I think applications is a very, very broad thing, and a lot of applications, I think as was pointed out in the panel as well, there are multiple systems that you need for a full-blown application to be effective. If you are doing real-time serving, you could do it through, HBase, Cassandra, whatever. If you are doing real-time analytics, you could do through Storm and Hive. So Hadoop, there's HDFS, which is storage layer, and then there is MapReduce, which is amenable for processing for a certain type of application, primarily in the batch processing world. I'm really excited to see a lot more other engines coming up, because that sort of plugs in some of the holes which are there intrinsically in this architecture when it tries to address a wide variety of performance metrics that different types of applications want. So I think the world would be, there is HDFS at the bottom, and the multiple different types of MapReduce is one of the ways of mechanisms of processing the data, and there are a couple of others addressing real-time nature, real-time data processing, as well as low latency queries and things like that. And as vendors of this type of infrastructure, we have to bring that in to make the platform amenable to a wide variety of applications out there. So to me, I think that is a natural course of action. I don't think there is a need for 12 different engines, but 2 or 3 different engines is certainly,
Do you have a time frame? If you're looking at Qubole today and saying, we acknowledging kind of that you need to work this into the product at some point. I mean, when, based on what you're hearing from customers or something, I mean, what's kind of the appetite for it?
I think it's imminent. I mean, if it was there today, people would use it today. I think there are, frankly speaking, nothing is production ready. Even the other projects are not really production ready yet. They are getting there. But people have been actually asking for faster, low latency queries for the last 2-3 years now. I mean, it's not. So there is certainly an appetite for this. There's absolutely no doubt. We see it in our customer base. They ask us, hey, can you make this faster? They ask us a lot, especially the big ones definitely ask us a lot. So there is definitely an appetite for that. There's no question about that. It's a question of these systems maturing through production use cases to a place where they can be put into production.
That's okay, you get one shot.
So first of all, I'll just say that I completely disagree with Stefan here, that I want the doctor to know what I'm buying at Safeway. So, Absolutely not. What is it?
I will contact.
I'll just add to that. I don't think it's about Hadoop going backwards. The contrary, actually. I think what's happening is we're seeing Hadoop expand to new use cases, right? So if Hadoop started as a batch processing system, well, then now we're seeing people want to do more things with this platform, right? People are, we have customers that have many petabytes of data in their clusters, and they want to do more than just the batch processing. And there's no doubt that the machine learning use cases, they're some of the most powerful ones. I mean, chances are if you use your credit card here over lunch, that was actually the models there were built in Hadoop, the models for risk and fraud for checking those transactions. So that's extremely powerful. But at the same time, that's not to say that there isn't value in adding additional use cases like low latency queries. And actually, if you look at from our perspective at Mapr, and if you compare Mapr to other companies in this space that are also kind of providing Hadoop distributions in the market, we actually see the long-term vision here as being kind of more the next Oracle versus the next Teradata, right? So I don't think this is just about analytics and providing some insights into how my business is doing or what's in the data, or asking bigger questions. I think it's actually a lot more. I think the online applications, the operational use cases will run on Hadoop as well, and we've invested a lot of resources to make that a reality and to provide one kind of integrated platform that can do both NoSQL applications as well as analytics and data processing in that one platform. So I think that's really the where we're heading, and we see other systems and technologies like search capabilities that we've integrated into the platform, and like stream analysis is something that some of the customers are using. So really that's the expansion of use cases is what we're seeing now. And I think that the next phase will be, so we're expanding use cases. The next phase will be a lot about the vertical applications, right? So providing, whether this is a healthcare application or a kind of network security application, a lot of these applications, and already a lot of, we're seeing companies that are OEMing our product into, for example, security appliances. That's already happening, and we'll see more and more of those, and that at the end of the day really democratizes it, right? Because if there's a telco billing application that's being sold to telcos, then yeah, it's great that there's Hadoop in there, but the telco doesn't really care, right? They're buying a telco billing app, right? And those are some of the use cases that we're
how do you actually innovate? I mean, on Hadoop itself, though, to say, so the machine learning is a classic thing I hear. Lots of machine learning going on. I don't know, companies are building into applications, whatever. But the general gist is, a lot of them maybe aren't doing it on Hadoop, right? Because it's just not. How do it evolve? I mean, they're doing it on Spark. They're doing it on, I guess, Yarn, kind of 2 layers abstracted, like Microsoft and stuff. How do you take Hadoop and say, we're going to make this applicable to?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go for Paco. All right. Paco.
So I'll take that. I'll take the bait there. I'm definitely a big fan of Spark. I don't know if it's the end-all, be-all, but obviously I'm biased because Mesos is kind of a foundation layer for Spark, or started out that way. What I'm seeing is a big uptake, even in enterprise, even in relatively conservative shops, where more and more the question they're asking is, what about Spark? In my perspective, Spark especially serves as a way to deconstruct Hadoop, because MapReduce is really from 2002, paper was 2004. So if you were to deconstruct what was going on in today's technology, or maybe looking out 3 to 5 years, what the price curves are on multi-core processors and large memory spaces, and the kind of disks that we have now, you would probably build a slightly different architecture than what they did in 2002. And Spark is really taking that look. It's like, how can you pull it apart and let the kernel do the heavy lifting, and just put building blocks that you build your distributed system out.
There's a bunch of, I heard Storm mentioned earlier as well, which I think is worthy of dissecting the question a bit further. I mean, there is no one of these that's the winner. Everything has an SLA. And that SLA can range from, this query is totally optional, to this query must return in 30 milliseconds or else the plane falls out of the sky. And there's a rather large sort of sliding scale between these extremes. Tools like MapReduce are very reliable. It's going to get your job done. It might just take hours. When we do real-time personalization, we've got a separate set of servers that do run systems more in memory so that it can serve those queries with low latency SLAs. But the training is still done in batch, overnight, every few hours, et cetera, depending on the client's use case. Tools like Storm actually offer a different dimension on the whole thing. If you're trying to make a real-time dashboard, if you have, say, like a multi-armed bandit style A/B test or tournament test between different machine learning algorithms, you have to stream data in and keep sliding windows of time with respect to how many users are clicking, what's your lift rate look like. So you can't do that with our recommendation outputting system because it's on the output side of the data set. You can't do it in MapReduce because you want your results fast. So there's different systems for sort of like ingest-based processing, outgest-based processing, and processing like overnight in the middle, etc. And they all play a role. I mean, in terms of integration, like some of our clients have literally, we have 10,000 Oracle schemas, 10,000 databases, and we're not going to replace all of them, unfortunately. And but that doesn't mean we have to, pull data in between, import, export, and merge it. And that's just kind of the reality that like an application is not a single, well-defined brick. It's a really large amoeba-like blob that interacts.
I should say too, I don't know how much we have. Is that 1 minute sign?
My 1 minute sign. One last minute.
Can I ask, does anyone have a question? Real quick.
I have a question. I understand that we have historically heterogeneous databases and fact systems. Where is the market heading towards converting all the CRM, ERP, and any legacy applications sitting on top of Hadoop rather than Oracle? Is the industry even moving that way?
Oh, I have the microphone. I can talk about that.
You're the only one who can talk about that.
And I made four notes. So if you think of Workday, yeah, for example, Workday, right? It's a PeopleSoft guys that now do HR data or HR management in the cloud. They're using Datameer. It's actually, if you use the analytics in Workday, it's our product. So yeah, absolutely, it's going that direction. If you look at Salesforce, in case you didn't notice, those guys have a little bit of problem, Larry, and yeah. So obviously they have no SQL in the backend. They're using Hadoop. Yeah, it absolutely moves in that direction. I think you had this one question I thought was fascinating. If you could, what would you sell? And I would like to answer that one because I think it's so critical, really to step up for all of us. What I would like to sell is time, because it's the only thing you can't buy for money. So, and we're a little bit, as engineers, and I put myself in that category, so fascinated by all those little technical details. But what we actually really need to do is serving the end users. And in the end, it's not really a question about query speed. It's a question of time to insight. If I need 18 months to optimize my data warehouse to make a 10 millisecond query, you know what? 18 months, I'm already off the market. Right? I want to get sometimes decisions very, very quickly. Yes, that's totally different if I want to kind of calculate the route for my airplane. But I think we really need to step up and, again, democratize it. Beautiful how you said that. One observation I want to share, though. What is fascinating is this Hadoop is a brand. So all the new stuff that comes in, MapReduce and HDFS will be there maybe as foundation. But now we have Yarn, and we will do Storm and Spark and all that good stuff on top of that. And we'll all integrate with, of course, HBase and what have you. It's a brand, and it's actually the first open source brand that started a whole new area of technology. So if you think back of G2E, you first had the commercial vendors and the open source followed, making a lower total cost of ownership product. But now this is the first time where we, the open source community, push the envelope and move things forward. And I think there's a big opportunity.
That's a great, we could do a whole discussion about that, but anyhow, time's up, so thank you.
Great. Well, we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think so. You can corner anyone and talk to them.
Yeah. Why don't we just keep sitting here?
Don't corner me.
Thank you guys for your time.